Hello again, and welcome back to the Slow Flowers Podcast with Deborah Prinzing. Welcome to a very special episode of the Slow Flowers Podcast, episode 500, part of our weekly podcast series about slow flowers and the people who grow and design with them, which we launched in July of 2013. Since then, I have regularly featured the voices of influencers, style makers, pioneers, and heroes in the slow flowers movement. And today we celebrate an impressive milestone with episode 500. It's all about making a conscious choice, and I invite you to join the conversation and the creative community as we discuss the vital topics of saving our domestic flower farms and supporting a floral industry that relies on a safe, seasonal, and local supply of flowers and foliage. This podcast is brought to you by slowflowers.com, the free online directory to more than 850 florists, shops, and studios who design with local, seasonal, and sustainable flowers, and to the farms that grow those blooms. It's the conscious choice for buying and sending flowers. And thank you to our lead sponsor for 2021, Farm Grow Flowers. Farm Grow Flowers delivers iconic burlap-wrapped bouquets and lush, abundant arrangements to customers across the U.S., supporting more than 20 U.S. flower farms by purchasing more than $9 million of U.S.-grown fresh and seasonal flowers and foliage annually, and by providing competitive salaries and benefits to 240 team members based in Watsonville, California, and Miami, Florida. Discover more at farmgrowflowers.com. For each podcast episode this year, we will also thank 3 of our major sponsors. Our next sponsor thanks goes to Longfield Gardens, which provides home gardeners with high-quality flower bulbs and perennials. Their online store offers plants for every region and every season, from tulips and daffodils to dahlias, caladiums, and amaryllis. Check out the full catalog at longfield-gardens.com. It's been a busy and exciting week here at the Slow Flowers Society. In January, you may remember that I introduced you to creative director Robin Ovney, my partner and co-founder of Bloom Imprint, the book publishing branch of Slow Flowers Society. You can find a link to that episode in today's show notes, and you'll hear us discuss the goal of telling stories by and about Slow Flowers members through the medium of books. Bloom Imprint's first title is at the printer right now, and we can't wait to tell you all about it. Where We Bloom is an information and idea-packed volume filled with 37 intimate and inspiring floral studios, workshops, storefronts, and growing spaces like greenhouses and barns, all home to creative floral enterprises of Slow Flowers members. You may have seen the cover art because I've shared a few sneak peeks across social media and in Slow Flowers' recent newsletter, but today I'm excited to introduce you to the woman responsible for the delightfully engaging space featured as our cover destination to illustrate the concept of Where We Bloom. You'll meet Cynthia Zamaria, Toronto-based designer, flower grower, and stylist, whose studio is called Cynthia Zamaria House and Flower. Cynthia will share a bit about her journey with flowers, and the 3 of us, Robin, Cynthia, and I, will discuss the central themes of Where We Bloom. I wrote about this in the introduction to the book. I wrote this: the importance of devoting space to the pursuit of one's art, the way environments can inspire individual expression and reflect one's aesthetic style, and the ways one's studio or workshop can inspire the senses. It's all part of Where We Bloom. There is also the intangible feeling of security and comfort that creative individuals may feel when they can escape to a destination where their ideas flourish and, yes, blossom. Let me tell you a bit more about Robin and Cynthia, and then we'll jump right into the conversation. Based in Gig Harbor, Washington, Robin Ovney is a creative veteran in the media and high-tech industries. Her experience includes more than 15 years in the publishing industry and 8 years at Microsoft in design and creative management. She has successfully managed innovative, award-winning design teams and high-profile projects, as well as received numerous national design awards and photo editing honors for her own work. Robin has produced 10 books, including collaborating with me on the Slow Flowers Journal Volume 1, which was published last year. In 2004, following Microsoft, Robin founded Bricolage, a consultancy specializing in creative strategy, content development, and trend analysis for home and garden. She has worked with Fortune 500 companies, national advertising agencies, and award-winning media properties, applying timely, actionable insight to their businesses. Robin received a BA in journalism from Indiana University in Bloomington and a Knight Wallace Journalism Fellowship at the University of Michigan. She holds a Master's of Communication in Digital Media from the University of Washington. Based in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, Cynthia Zamaria is an interior and floral designer known for character-filled spaces and carefree floral displays. With an infectious creative spirit and a belief that we all need more beautiful in our lives, Cynthia shares inspiration as an interior and floral editorial stylist, content contributor, writer, and workshop teacher. Her work is regularly featured in leading lifestyle media. An advocate of the Slow Flowers movement, Cynthia sustainably grows small batch specialty blooms and designs unfussy seasonal arrangements. This soulful aesthetic spills into Cynthia's interiors, which are true to the space, trendless mashups of scale, texture, and color. Cynthia and her husband Graham share a passion for saving forgotten houses, and they have restored a range of period properties. A former public relations executive, Cynthia now devotes her time to family and creative projects from her home base in Toronto. I'm so happy to welcome my two creative friends as we discuss Where We Bloom and share the story of this beautiful book project with you. I'll share links to their social places so you can find and follow Robin and Cynthia. And check out our show notes for episode 500 to see a few inside photos of the pages of Where We Bloom. Let's jump right in and get started. Welcome back to the Slow Flowers podcast with Deborah Prinzing, and we have lots to celebrate today. It is episode 500 of the Slow Flowers podcast, which is like boggles the mind. And every time we hit the 100 mark of the next century, I guess, of episodes, I always want to have somebody special to make it a party. And today we have two special guests. My partner, Robin Ovney in Bloom Imprint. Hi, Robin.
Good morning, Deborah.
Good morning. Celebrations all around.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
You all heard and met Robin and heard from her when we launched Bloom Imprint in January. And our very special guest is Cynthia Zamaria of Cynthia Zamaria House and Flower based in Toronto. Hi, Cynthia.
Hello, and congratulations.
Well, back at you, because big reveal here, Cynthia is our cover girl of Where We Bloom, our brand new book that will be available in just a week or so, around April 14th. So we wanted to have Cynthia on to talk about her business and who she is. So, and you're a first-time guest of the podcast, and I just want to introduce you to the listeners. So I guess let me just give a little recap of Where We Bloom and this book. This is the first title in Bloom Imprint, the new publishing company that is sort of the boutique publishing arm of Slow Flowers, created by Robin Ovney and me. And we started with this book because it was a way to build community and feature a lot of Slow Flowers members showing off their workspaces, studios, shops, greenhouses, potting sheds, barns, you name it. Right, Robin?
Yes, we definitely have a great variety from kitchen and laundry room to beautiful outdoor structures.
Yeah, structure is a good word for it. The subtitle of Where We Bloom is 37 intimate, inventive, and artistic studio spaces where floral passions find a place to blossom. And those of you who have known me for years as a garden writer know that I wrote a book in 2008 called Stylish Sheds and Elegant Hideaways, all about garden sheds. And there's definitely a crossover into this book, but these are dedicated floral spaces. And there is a diversity of architecture and location and personality and design. And Cynthia definitely was a standout for someone we wanted to have in the book with her aesthetic, but also we're going to hear from Robin about how Cynthia's floral office or whatever we call it made it to the cover. But first, I want to talk a little bit about Cynthia and her business. So on the cover, people will see what looks like, I guess, kind of a standard, a potting shed, basically, right, Cynthia? How would you describe it?
Yeah, it was a 9 by 12 pre-built, actually built by Mennonites, believe it or not, in the community where, not far from the community where it ended up living. And we customized it a little bit, but yeah, you can get one of these beauties and you can make it your own. And that's really what we did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love the fact that you bring that up. It's almost like a standard measurement and materials, and so it could be something you could order from a local big box store or from builders in your community that kind of go to the home shows and sell these sorts of things.
Absolutely. And when we were looking for our studio, potting shed, flower office, whatever you like to call it, we had done that. We had gone to many different places and looked, and yeah, you can find something like this at a lumber yard or, as you say, a big box store. And the creativity and the fun comes with how you can make it your own and add your flavor to it. Mm-hmm. So it's incredible how many people reached out to me after they've seen this shed saying, how did you do this and what did you do and how can I do that myself? And they're very inspired by it. So that's really rewarding. And I just hope that this helps empower people to take that shed they may have in their backyard that is kind of, holding a bunch of tools and all other kinds of equipment and transform it. And it's a couple weekends later and you'll have your space.
Well, Cynthia, it really reflects your preference for materials, details, and finishes. And, you brought a designer's eye to it. So talk about some of the little upgrades that you did to this standard wooden structure. And I know that some were like, you had a high-low mix, like some were more of an investment and others you made decisions about what not to spend money on, right?
Sure, for sure. So we painted, we used a lot of white paint. My secret weapon is white paint or black. If you see our new shed, which is, we'll get to, I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit about that later. But this one, we went white. We wanted a nice clean palette to be a backdrop for the work that we do. So it was a lot of paint, a large bench, two-leveled so that you could, have a large work surface as well as an area underneath to, put supplies. Windows were really important to me. We look over a lake, so we wanted to have a bank of windows that opened up over to the lake, but then also to have these large farm doors at the front that you could easily get equipment in and out of, or buckets of blooms in and out of, but also created that indoor-outdoor feel. So that was important to us to go that little bit extra and get more windows in there. But really, you can do this with any kind of shed or any kind of space that you have. Clean it up. We left the plywood floor. The one luxury was to get water in there and to get a sink. But it was just a metal sink from IKEA, one of those standard things that you can take with you from an apartment, and use that for water. And then we had a bucket cleaning pipe installed as well. So those were the two luxuries because, if you don't have to carry water, it helps out a lot.
Well, you brought water in, but you also brought power in, right? Because the lighting choices I thought were really inspired and just fit the vibe of the personality that you wanted to express.
Yes, we need lots of light and lots of good tunes. So we needed to have the stereo on.
One final question about the design, Cynthia. Did you have someone put on that metal roof? It's like a standing seam metal roof or some kind of... Okay.
Yeah, that was an option. So, when you go to these places and look at these sheds, you can usually customize them, or there's different types of finishes. So we could have gotten a regular black shingle or a gray shingle, but we upgraded a little bit.
Yeah, I like the metal a lot.
The sound of the rain on the tin roof is quite lovely. So yeah, we do enjoy that.
I love that. Well, it was selected to be the cover photo. And I just think because I'm a book nerd and Robin is too, and we geek out on things like this, as do you, Cynthia, it would be fun to hear from Robin a little bit about how that all came to be. Because we decided pretty early on about the cover because we wanted to just let people know the book was in the works. So we did have to design it early. And Robin, can you talk about that process?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I'd love to because it's that magic that we love, Deborah, right?
Mm-hmm.
You texted me and you said you have to look at these photos that we just got in. So we hopped on Zoom and we looked at them and I was like, oh my God. So we should give a shout out to Robin Stubert, who is the photographer of all of the images of Cynthia Shed and did an amazing job. And we started looking and we're like, oh my God, this is more than a one-page spread. This is 2 pages. Wait, this is 3 pages. And then we thought, well, this just has the potential for the cover. But we also were looking at two others for the cover as well. So we kind of put them all out there, and you and me and our graphic designer, Jenny Diaz, got together and we looked at them, mocked up a few, but this was a clear winner. Um, so we went from 3 to 1, and we were thrilled to be there. And we worked on the typography and we worked on the crop, and we thought we had one that we liked because we had just basically put the whole shed on the cover. And, Jenny came back to me and said, I mean, it looks good, but it's not wowing me like it should because this is such a spectacular photograph. So we went back to the drawing board and we realized for this book and a lot of our books, we're doing what's called, a gatefold flap, which means inside when you open it up, there's a flap that you can stick things in and messages and papers. But also we thought, oh my gosh, we should utilize this as a design tool. So what we did was we started playing with the crop of the photo, and we came out with cropping part of the door out, the right-hand door out, which shows up on the flap. And the way it's all cropped and that it presents is like it's welcoming you into this shed. It's welcoming you into this book. And then if you flip open the flap, you're inside.
Mm.
So the visual metaphor is really wonderful for the type of book that this is and talking about these spaces.
Mm.
And it's just because we had Robin's beautiful, beautiful photography to work with that we were able to really leverage and make a spectacular cover like this.
And just in hearing your description about the welcoming, the photo really lent itself to that because the way, and we're going to hear about Cynthia as a photo stylist because I know Cynthia was to credit for this. The doors were flung open. And you could see right into the space, the interiors, and all the things that Robin had just mentioned, like the shelves where the buckets of blooms are and all the tools and the windows. It was just that photo worked in so many ways because the doors were open. It wasn't an exterior only shot. It gave you a little bit of interior as well, right?
Exactly. And also it was surrounded by green and the lushness of the idea of being out, whether it's in the flower field, in the garden. So it really had that sense of an atmosphere about it that made you want to be inside one of those. You wanted that in your backyard. You wanted to be able to go out and say, gosh, what could I do if I had something like this?
I guess that's part of the art and science of book jacket design anyway, isn't it? Like you really have to communicate everything that's inside just at a glance on the cover.
Exactly. It has to welcome, especially when you're talking about spaces, right? And visual. We're very visual. We do flowers, we do spaces. So you have to be visual as well. And to capture that all in one photo, when you got it, but finding it is that search, that magical search.
Wow. Well, everyone who's listening can see the cover and of course some interior spreads in the show notes for today's episode 500 at deborahprinzing.com. But I want to turn the attention to Cynthia now and just talk about you, Cynthia, and your work because we met a couple years ago when I was at an event in Toronto, and we didn't have a lot of time to talk, but we immediately started following each other on Instagram. And you just came across my transom very frequently, and I always loved what you posted. And it's just fun that full circle we're now doing a book together, 2 or 3 years later. So tell us about Cynthia Zamaria House and Flower. What is your métier? What drives you?
Really is a fusion of my two passions, which are interiors and flowers. I've always had a desire to mingle those and marry those two of my interests together. And my path has not been linear. Like many of us, I'm sure, getting to where you want to be, and sometimes the journey getting there itself has lots of twists and turns. And for me, that's for sure. I mean, I started 25 years ago working in public relations and communications, and that was my career. That was my profession. And on the side, I always dabbled in home improvement projects. We always had gardens, and I always loved flowers. So it's taken 25 years, and what I joke to say is like a midlife crisis. Instead of buying a motorcycle or a sports car, I decided to grow flowers and start a flower farm. But
because that's so much easier, right?
That's right. It would have been way less expensive just to buy the sports car, I tell you, and a lot less aggravation. But no, really, seriously, this has been an incredible journey. And it's not easy to describe what I do because I do many things, and it's hard to put a label on it. But I would say most, if you wanted to encapsulate it, it is about creating beautiful spaces and sharing that and inspiring others and giving them the confidence to do the same. And having them look at things differently. And that's why I'm so honored. So thank you very much for putting our work on the cover and in the book, because that's quite an honor. And thank you.
Yeah. Oh, you bet. And as Robin hinted at, there are 3 spreads, which adds up to 6 full pages, we have a few of those larger stories, but it's one of the biggest, and so people can read your personal experience of connecting flowers and interiors, and what really happened at the end of that story of flower farming, because the structure is in a cutting garden. With the way it was, if you pull back beyond what you see on the cover, it's surrounded by flowers, and you had planted your own mini farm in a residential area where people weren't used to seeing flowers, right?
Yeah, that's right. So let me take you back 25 years just for a second. And because I think it's an important story to tell, because I think people should think about their business or what they want to do, and how sometimes taking a risk or having some trust in yourself helps you get there. So Graham and I, my husband, had one of our first houses together, and it was a sweet row house in downtown Toronto. It was a Victorian, and we had fixed it up. We had DIY'd it and painted it, and we loved that house and had started our family in it. And we had painted our front door this olive green. And it was Christmas time, and we had this beautiful red berry wreath on the front door. And that was just kind of what we did. We loved to make our house look pretty and decorate. And one day someone knocked on our door, and it was a magazine editor. And she said, I was just walking in the neighborhood, and I love what's on your door. And would you mind if we took some photos of it and put it in our holiday issue? We're doing a feature on wreaths. And we said, yeah, of course, come on in. And we signed the release. We showed the woman around, and she said to us, are you a designer? And I said, well, no, not really. Well, have you ever thought of putting your work in a magazine and being photographed? And we said, no, but we could try. Sure, let's do this, right? So that was the beginning. That was 25 years
Wow.
ago. And since then, every one of our homes, and we've had a few along the way, we have had featured, we've had collaborations. It's morphed into me leveraging my love of interiors and flowers into to doing styling work and growing flowers to do styling work and for special events and for certain things. So that just goes to say that this is something that has been in me for a very long time and has been something that I've developed over the years and played around with it recreationally. And then about 4 years ago, we decided to make a big move, and I left my career in PR, and we decided to start flower farming at this property that we had, which was our country, weekend place that we would go. It was just a small little house on it, but we had a lot of field. And I learned and attended some workshops and did all that I could to understand about the flower farming industry and the business, and of course the slow flower movement, which was very important to me to do this very sustainably. And that was the beginning. And that was about 4 years ago.
Wow. You're absolutely right. Like when you describe this wonderful story about the olive door and the red berry wreath, which I don't think Robin and I have heard that story before. So I want to see that photo.
Yeah, I want to see that photo too. And I also have to say I love the story because it talks about how these things grow and bloom, right? Which is exactly, I mean, Deborah's and my relationship, it very similar. We met about 15 years ago, and now we're working together because it evolved that way. So I love that history, Cynthia, that you shared.
Yeah. And, like Cynthia, you said you don't know how to describe your business, but back when that editor reached out to you, little did you know there was a way to create a profession that blended all of your interests into, and that photo styling is part of that, but it's also content development and, writing a blog and producing articles for magazines. And like all of that uses many of the skills you had in PR and marketing, as well as your hobby that you and your husband were doing with home renovation, right?
Exactly. It's amazing how things come together. And, I say that even to my kids now when they're going to school and they're in university and they don't know exactly what they're going to do when they grow up. And it's, it sounds trite, but really do follow your heart, follow what you love. And it's amazing how things will collide, and you'll find something that you love to do. And that's really what happened with us. And the other thing is to not be afraid to change your mind, right? So, the place that we talked about 4 years ago that we started to grow this flower farm on, we had gotten 1 year under our belt. We were ready to move our family there. We had renovated the house there, and we were ready to embark on this new lifestyle when something crossed our paths and we changed our mind. And, I love the expression. It's one of my favorites, which is, sometimes on the way to your dream, you get lost and you find a better one. And we did. In that instance, we decided that place and that enterprise was not going to be right for us at that time in our lives with our kids and where we were. And we happened to find this beautiful home, a heritage home from 1857 in a community where my husband grew up, that had a couple of acres that we could at least, have a nice garden on. And that we decided to change gears, and we went that route. And that's the subject that you're seeing on the cover of the book.
The quote you just gave us, Cynthia, of course, Robin and I love that. And it is a pull quote in your chapter in Where We Bloom about getting, kind of a sidetrack and finding a new dream on your journey. So for you, you've had this happen to you multiple times, but the one you're alluding to then is when you bought the Miller house, which is where the shed resided that is on the cover, right?
Yes. So, one of my favorite, aside from fixing up houses, one of my other favorite things to do is to incessantly look at real estate listings. I have a little bit of a impatient streak in me, and I'm always looking for projects, but I do love to wander. Mostly I'm a romantic, and I love to imagine ourselves in those spaces or in different places in our lives. So I was, trolling the real estate listings, which I normally do. And there was this big, beautiful home that came up for sale in a community where my husband happened to have grown up, which is just outside of Toronto, about an hour and a half on the shore of Lake Erie. It's in a community called Port Dover. And it's a mid-sized, small community where you've got, some old homes and some large large properties. So we
Mm-hmm.
had, some land, and we had always wanted to restore um, a true historic home. And we found her and we fell in love with her, and that was kind of the end of it. So we left the flower farm and we decided, okay, well, we'll morph this into something where we've got at least 3/4 of an acre where we can have a big cutting garden. We can do workshops. We can, grow small scale for events. And of course, I can use it for styling and for teaching and that kind of thing, and for creating content. So that began that journey. And we were fortunate enough to be able to still live in Toronto while we renovated that home, so we could go back and forth and we didn't have to kind of live through the renovation. So that was a real treat. One of the first times that's happened. So, yeah, the garden was very much a part of the house, and the house was very much part of the garden.
Which is really how you approach living. That's just your life philosophy.
Yes. Yeah, Graham and I have both always grown up with gardens, and our parents were both very much into agriculture and growing, and it's something that we wanted to pass along to our children. So having gardens, growing vegetables, growing flowers, that has all been very important to us.
Well, you talked about creating content, and basically, if anyone visits your website, which we'll share the link, there are multiple kind of departments showing some of the collaborations that you and Graham have lived through while breathing new life into old properties. In general, it's a whole property approach. You'll put as much emphasis on renovating a garden as the home interiors, right?
Yeah. That's really, really important, making sure that we have space to grow. And Miller House also had an old coach house which was also turned into a studio space. So we've got the potting shed garden outside, and then there's another interior space that was going to be used for workshops and also just doing design work. So that was very much important to us in terms of how we design the home and making sure that the home there was flow. But surrounding yourself with flowers wherever you are, whatever you do, whether it's a business or just a hobby, is something that's really important. And we're bringing that into the new place that we have because, spoiler alert, we're not in that house anymore. Surprise, surprise. Yeah. We're on to our 7th house now. And I never say never, but we're staying put for a while.
Well, okay, you've let the cat out of the bag. You have a new project, and I want to ask Robin to jump in and just help us tell the story about the next chapter of our collaboration with you, Cynthia, because when we first met, we're on the West Coast, you're on the East Coast. We've had a lot of Zoom meetings, and I introduced you to Robin, and we started looking at your website and your gallery of photos that you had produced with Robin and other photographers. And it kind of started dawning on Robin Ovney that there was something that could lead to a new project. So, Robin, why don't you talk about how you sort of drank that all in and digested it and came up with something brilliant for us to do with Cynthia next?
Well, I think, the gorgeous photography and what was photographed was so gorgeous and so simple and beautiful. And I just remember asking Cynthia, other than the website, is there anything else you have that we could look at? And she sent me these links to drop boxes of photos, and it was right around the holidays, I think. And I started going through it, and it was, late one night, and all of a sudden I started mocking up covers and spreads with her stuff. And I'm like, oh, we got a book here.
You're hooked.
I'm hooked. I'm hooked. This is gorgeous. Do you think she would do one? I texted Deborah. And so that's when we started talking to you, because then we realized that you were renovating your current house, the Ludi house. Am I saying that correctly? And that it had a garden and that it had interiors, it had heritage. And also, what it had was a great story aside from what you're doing, but that we could actually live through this renovation with you. And I have to tell you, some of the unrenovated photos are as gorgeous as the renovated photos. So, so then we just started talking about what that might be, and we are thrilled because Cynthia has so many great ideas and has such a great eye. And I also want to say that your design is not what I would call fussy, even down to like the flowers, right? That it's very approachable and I yet elegant. And so I think it's really inspiring to see, and Deborah and I agree on this, Deborah thought so too, which is to see that you are taking what is out in your garden and making it just blend seamlessly into your home. That it is truly, it's called House and Flower because that is exactly what it is that is this wonderful blend that you create. And we couldn't
Yeah.
be more thrilled.
Yeah.
That's so kind of you. Thank you. And I couldn't be happier to share this and hopefully inspire others to take whatever space that they're in and transform it into something that they want it to be, whether that's, whether you've got an old house or a brand new house, whether you live in an apartment, there's always something that you can do to make that space personally yours and to inject it with and infuse it with a lot of beauty. And of course, flowers is always very much part of that for me. And I want to encourage people to do that. I mean, the people, probably listening to this call, flowers are very much part of what they do. And they can appreciate that and they can see that. Certainly, maybe some of their customers are searching for that, are searching for the lift and the love that flowers brings into their lives. So I think that this is a book that will appeal, hopefully to people who love flowers and people who want to learn how to use flowers in their lives and in their homes in a way that's not so hard to do and that is easy. And as you say, unfussy and kind of uncontrived and very natural and very much in keeping with, the sustainable movement and letting flowers stand on their own and be as beautiful as they can be just as they are. So that's a lot of my philosophy.
Yeah. And you really are in this, I think, unique sweet spot of crossover between lifestyle and flower growing. Because we're seeing so many people, in the kind of home gardener category wanting to grow their own cutting garden. That's clear. That's been documented for the past year of explosion, COVID gardening, basically. But once they do that, once they've harvested those flowers or grown them, how do they incorporate them into their daily lives or into their interiors? And I feel like that's the crossover part that your book will be showing people.
Yes.
And also just the personal thought process of renovating a house, which we also think is continuing to be a subject of interest. I don't know, Robin, if you want to add to that or not.
Well, actually, it's one of the explosions that happened during COVID with people spending so much time at home. I know there's been a lot of coverage of people who are moving, and there's been a lot dedicated to that, but remodeling is off the roof, small scale and large scale. And so this is the sweet spot of people really making their home inside and out somewhere that they love to be, which is not going to go away. That will not go away. We will be able to venture out more, but we still want to love the space that we're in.
Yeah, that's great. So Cynthia is in the midst of this renovation. And how are you approaching it, Cynthia? I know you've kind of got a rough outline, but are you having to be super attentive and intentional about photographing everything you're doing so it gets captured for the book?
Yes, I take photographs of almost everything anyhow, so I think this has become more intentional because I've got Robin in the back of my head saying, "Okay, take a picture of what you're doing." So I'm doing it more. But that was something that I learned how to take photography. I learned a lot of that on my own, and the more I can take pictures, the better I can get. I mean, if you could take 50 pictures, one might be okay. So
she's being modest. She's a very good photographer as well, and I stalk her on her Instagram account and say, "Oh, we need that one for the book." So.
Right.
Don't use an iPhone. Get the real photo, right?
Right.
I'm like, you're taking a picture of that, right?
My photos are actually with real camera, and I upload them. But I mean, the challenge is trying, to find a balance of, not to give everything away, but to share the process, because the process is really, I think, is really important. And the decisions that you make as you renovate a home, we like to call it, Graham and I, it's much more of a gentle renovation, because we always take the house and her soul first, and then we work around that. And as we, strip back the house and she really reveals herself to us, that's really where a lot of the design elements come in. We work with the space that we have, and that's really exciting. So we've had some surprises in this house as we've, taken off some old, plywood boards that were up and found some really incredible things behind it that are going to end up being some of the features in the home. So we did that very much with that Miller House, the other home that we had, and certainly with this one, that's very much our philosophy, to really let the house speak to you, be gentle with it, use what you've got, and don't be afraid of taking some risks too, because that's all the rooms that I've done that we kind of think, oh, should I really paint that room, bright strawberry pink and the ceiling gold, like we did at the Belvedere at Miller House. Those have ended up being some of the most magical spaces. So,
Wow.
Trusting your gut is fun too. So yeah. And we've done a few. So now we're like, we don't want to do the same thing again. So every space is different. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. And it's so interesting, Cynthia, when we first started getting to know each other better, I just had the assumption that you wanted to have this like interior design business, and you wanted to have clients, and, you've confessed to me that, that's, yes, you get asked all the time, but that's really not where your heart is. Your heart is doing your own projects that become content that you can use for publishing and online or for other publications. And that's really what excites you, because it's such an extension of your personal aesthetic. And a client will have their own aesthetic, and that might not, float your boat as much. And that's not bad. It's just good to know, actually.
I would also add, Deborah, that I think, and Cynthia, correct me if I'm wrong, but just from getting to know you and listening to you and working on the book, that you also see an educational component in all of what you do. And that's important for you to share. And that's part of when when a house appears in a magazine, there's always lessons along the way. And your blog is very much about, here's how you could do it. So I see that as that component as a very strong element as well.
I agree. Yeah.
I want to, most importantly, give people the confidence that they can do this. I think that so oftentimes we become, paralyzed. I'm like, should I paint the wall blue, or should I paint it white or white? And you can make that decision, and you can do what suits you, and it's your space, and you need to love your space. The same with the garden. You can garden however the heck you want to garden, as long as it brings you joy and it makes you happy. That's what matters. So that's why when Deborah was saying, sometimes it's a challenge for me to see myself working with some other people who, I want it to be their space, right? They have to own it. And that's why designing for others is sometimes a challenge. I'd rather do it this way and inspire them and give tips and tricks and ideas. And then you take that, digest what you will, take what you can, and leverage that into your own home and your own space. And you'll have something that is truly yours and that you love.
Yeah.
The one caveat, though, that I'll make is I'm starting to work actually on an exciting project with a local builder who's transforming a lot of the homes in our neighborhoods. And so working on sort of semi-new builds is actually kind of an exciting thing because you've got a carte blanche and you can work together to imagine who would like to live in this house and design it for them. And that's really exciting for me. But building on what you were saying earlier about garden spaces, one of the things that I really want to advocate in these new homes is garden space and creating gardens, not just landscaped backyards, but places where people can grow, raised beds, whatever it is, depending on the specific envelope of property. We need to satisfy that yearn that people have right now to grow things. And that has certainly been one of the positive outcomes of COVID and people being at home more, which is, they're coming back to roots and they're really taking more of an interest in growing things, in flowers, and sharing that with their families. So that's something for me that's really exciting. Because when I look at my backyard right now, and you'll see this in the new book, we've got the whole yard is gone. It's raised garden beds. And when I look across at the other yards, they're not used. They're pieces of grass. Then I really want these people to get out there and start growing things and hoping to inspire people to do that.
Yeah, I think what I'm taking away from this conversation is really like you share your lessons learned, and in doing so, inspire and empower other people to use some of these tips, but put their own spin on it. And that, I think, is really why your new book, which we're so excited about, House and Flower, will be really, universally beneficial for anybody who picks it up. We don't have an exact pub date, but Robin, what are we looking at? January?
Yes, I think we're looking at December, January.
Okay.
So, and more realistically, I think we'll be in January. Just knowing how the pace of the construction goes, we are able to turn around very quickly, which is really a lovely thing to be able to do. But we also have to not make sure that we don't exhaust Graham and Cynthia.
It's a wonderful collaboration, and we're just getting started on it because we had to get Where We Bloom off to the printer before we could pivot to our subsequent titles. So there's a lot more information about Cynthia's new book on our website, Where We Bloom, and also I did see, Cynthia, that you started posting about the book on your website. So that's really fun to have the big reveal and now be able to start sort of building up anticipation and excitement for that, because it's going to be really, really fun for us to have a title that has that kind of inclusivity of interiors and interior styling, because, you're opening up a new category for us.
Yeah, it's exciting for me. So thank you so very much.
Oh, you bet. Well, we are going to have an official book launch for Where We Bloom. It will be a virtual book launch on April 27th. It won't be, super involved, but just sort of like everybody who hears this, we'll be posting on our Bloom imprint .com and also on our Instagram feed, which is @bloom.imprint. More details forthcoming, and you'll get to see more about the book, and maybe we'll have some fun giveaways and just have a toast to our inaugural book and our cover girl. Hopefully Cynthia can be there too, and Robin will, of course, co-host that with me. So just a whole month of celebration once this baby gets published, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, well, I think we've had a fun conversation. It's wonderful to commemorate both the podcast milestone of 500 episodes or episode 500, and it's also wonderful to have something really new and exciting to talk about with two people who I adore. And congratulations, both of you, for birthing this beautiful book with us.
Right back at you, Deborah. Right back at you.
Cynthia, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been really a wonderful, wonderful conversation, and it's just getting me revved up about your new book.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks a lot, Robin. We'll talk to you soon, okay?
Yep. Bye, everybody.
so much for joining me today. You can pre-order a signed copy of Where We Bloom at bloomimprint.com, and we are offering bulk discounts to floral retailers, so reach out if you're interested in quantities. Don't forget to join Robin and me, along with many of the talented Slow Flowers members featured in Where We Bloom, at our virtual book launch party on Tuesday, April 27th at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. We'll be sharing some giveaways and introducing you to a few creatives featured in our pages. You can find the link in our show notes today. If you're in the Seattle area, please come out and say hello at 2 upcoming book signing events. We'll be wearing our masks and observing careful social distancing practices, I promise. On May 1st, from 2 to 4 in the afternoon, Jillian Matthews and Ravenna Gardens, Seattle's boutique home and garden emporium, will host a signing, and we expect that some of the creatives featured in Where We Bloom will join us. On May 8th, from 1 to 3 in the afternoon, we'll be at Paper Delights in Burien, just outside Seattle, where we are joining Teresa Rao of Belle Patal at her Mother's Day floral pop-up. Teresa is featured in the pages of Where We Bloom, so we're thrilled to share this event with her. To find out what's next for Bloom Imprint, sign up for our newsletter and follow us on social media. I'll have those links for you in today's show notes. Later this year, Bloom Imprint will publish 2 exciting books by Slow Flowers members. First, we'll release an essential guide to rose growing from Felicia Alvarez of Menagerie Farm and Floral. And then we'll publish Holly Chappell's long-awaited first book, A Life in Flowers. We have 4 other titles in the catalog for 2022, including, as you heard, Cynthia Zamaria's book, House and Flower. What a dynamic lineup of creativity. Our next sponsor thank you goes to Red Twig Farms, based in Johnstown, Ohio. Red Twig Farms is a family-owned farm specializing in peonies, daffodils, tulips, and branches, a popular peony bouquet by mail program, and their special Spread the Hope campaign, where customers purchase 10 tulip stems for essential workers and others in their community. Learn more at redtwigfarms.com. And save the date for this Friday's April member meetup for the Slow Flowers community. That's right, on Friday, April 9th, you can join our monthly meetup via Zoom. The time is always 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern. This month, we welcome 2 Slow Flowers leaders who will share their approach to sustainable floral design and green practices. Learn more about the definition of sustainability in floral design and gain insights about how you can adapt your floral enterprise to be safer, healthier, and more beautiful. You'll learn from Toby Nelson of Toby Nelson Events and Design. She's based on Whidbey Island in Washington State. And from Becky Feasby of Prairie Girl Flowers, based in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. You can find the Zoom link to join us in today's show notes, and come prepared to ask your questions about this important shift in floristry. We'll have some fun giveaways, and you might win one of our drawings. Our final sponsor thank you goes to the Seattle Wholesale Growers Market, a farmer-owned cooperative committed to providing the very best the Pacific Northwest has to offer in cut flowers, foliage, and plants. The Growers Market's mission is to foster a vibrant marketplace that sustains local flower farms and provides top-quality products and services to the local floral industry. Visit them at seattlewholesalegrowersmarket.com. Thanks so much for joining us today. The Slow Flowers podcast has been downloaded more than 711,000 times by listeners like you. We wrapped up the month of March with 13.5 thousand downloads. Wow, that's the highest in the past year. Thank you for listening, commenting, and sharing. It means so much. As our movement gains more supporters and more passionate participants who believe in the importance of our domestic cut flower industry, the momentum is contagious. I know you feel it too. I value your support and invite you to show your thanks to support Slow Flowers' ongoing advocacy, education, and outreach activities. You can find the donate button in the column to the right at DeborahPrinzing.com. I'm Deborah Prinzing, host and producer of the Slow Flowers podcast. Next week, you're invited to join me in putting more Slow Flowers on the table, one vase at a time. And if you like what you hear, please consider logging on to iTunes and posting a listener review. The content and opinions expressed here are either mine alone or those of my guests alone, independent of any podcast sponsor or other person, company, or organization. The Slow Flowers podcast is engineered and edited by Andrew Brenlin. Learn more about his work at soundbodymovement.com.